November 28, 2022, one of those days in our checkered history when the dream of freedom, the yearning for a piece of home to call our own, was met with chains not of iron, but of injustice, tightening around the risk of three honorable men, Clochi, Francis Chinye, Nestor Langme.
I saw a double standard being used by the federal courts of the United States and by the Justice Department. The unfairness, the double standards being played out with respect to the Kansas City Three.
In Lee's Summit, Missouri, St. Paul, Minnesota, Buffalo, New York, the chill of that morning was not just a whisper of winter. It was the cold grip of betrayal, as if the very ideas of liberty and justice on which their adopted nation prided itself had turned their backs on them.
Now, what's the difference between a terrorist and a freedom fighter? George Washington, who is the father of the United States, he was considered to be a terrorist. If the British had captured him, they would string him up. But what did we call George Washington? A freedom fighter.
Because these men dared to dream of liberating Southern Cameroons from decades of usurpation, belligerent occupation, and of oppression by French Cameroon.
We must raise our voices that justice be done.
But to their detractors, to those who wield the word terrorism like a blunt weapon, their aspiration for freedom was a threat to be squashed. The news branded them conspirators, aligning their noble cause with the vilest of accusations.
Begin a campaign focused on the members of Congress in your district.
Yet not once did the term terrorism truly reflected their actions or intentions. In the eyes of justice, they were yet to be judged, but in the courtroom of public opinion, fueled by corrupt media and proxies of Biya, they had already been condemned, denied bail, their future hung in the uncertain balance of a trial that seemed as distant as the dream of liberation itself.
Do not allow the United States government to define your heroes. These three young men have put their lives on the line for you.
Yeah.
They are your hero.
Good evening, fellow Ambazonians, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to this very important broadcast that we will be having with Professor Hinds for the second time again to talk on this very important issue in the hearts of the people of Ambazonia, the Kansas City Three. I'm talking about Clochi, Francis Chinye, Nestor Langme, whom, as I speak this minute, have been in confinement for over 730 days, 30 nights, without trial, without bail in the United States of America. That is unbelievable. It is unthinkable. What is happening? What is their crime? Professor Hinds, when he was with us in the month of April, encouraged our community in a very tremendous way. This is a legal mind who has a great interest in this case, and today he will be providing to us some updates and probably advising our community on what next is important to be done to ensure that these three patriotic citizens of the Southern Cameroons, the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, may find justice within the sovereign territory of the United States of Ambazonia, the leader of the free world. We begin the conversation right after the break. Stay tuned. Good afternoon, Professor Hinds. You're welcome to this very important program. Glad to have you here today. Can you hear me, Professor
Good
Hinds?
afternoon. Good afternoon. Good evening.
Thanks. We're excited and delighted to have you here for the second time. It's been months, and we understand that you have been doing some work at the background, advising our government on the steps necessary to ensure the freedom or that justice be served for the Kansas City Three. And I'm going to ask you we have some questions here tonight for you to take them. And I'm going to ask you the very first question, Professor Hinds. Can you share a few words of your perspective on the individuals known as the Kansas City Three? How does their case fit into your professional interests as a world-renowned advocate for human rights and freedoms? We understand that you were an advocate even for Nelson Mandela. Please talk to us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts concerning the case of what is known as the Kansas City Three. Um, I have practiced and taught international law for the past 52 years. The double standards in the prosecution of these three Americans of Cameroonian descent has compelled me to become an advocate for their cause. Their case represents a case study of disparate treatment and selective prosecution in violation of both the U.S. law and violation of international law.
That's an amazing. I think there is no better way to flatter the people of Amazonia and the people of Southern Cameroons who are listening to you today and hoping that your involvement will bring some or will ensure justice for them. Now, very elaborately, and in your view, is there a disparity in treatment between the Kansas City Three? That is, who are U.S. citizens originally from Southern Cameroons, like you have mentioned, and other groups of U.S. citizens, such as those supporting Ukrainians against Russia or Israelis against Hamas? How so?
Most definitely. U.S. citizens, as we speak here uh, today, civilians are fighting in Ukraine and are fighting with the Israeli Defense Forces in Israel. Understand what I'm saying? Civilians from the United States are enlisting, traveling abroad, and fighting in foreign countries, fighting in Israel against Palestinians, fighting in Ukraine against Russians, and they are fighting in wars in which the United States has not declared war against either Russia or the Palestinians. Now, that is in clear violation of U.S. federal law called the Neutrality Act, which is Title 18 of the United States Code, Section 959. Fundraising is taking place as we speak Millions of dollars are being collected by U.S. citizens, civilians, and being sent abroad in Ukraine and sent abroad in Israel. For what purpose? To help in securing weapons, military weapons, to support a war effort. Now, that is precisely what the allegations are against Francis Cheney, Claude Chi, and Lamnester Lagme, the three United States citizens of Cameroonian descent. So it begs the question, why are these three black men, U.S. citizens of Cameroonian descent, being treated differently, being prosecuted, while others who are white, many of them U.S. citizens, either of Israeli descent or Ukrainian descent, or simply just supporters of those two countries, sending monies to be used for weapons in violation of U.S. law, because the United States has not declared war against Russia, nor has it declared war against the Palestinians. So there is disparate treatment and selective prosecution of these Cameroonians. And that is why I have lent my voice to point out this disparity.
Now, before I move on to what you did in this year in July, following on with what you have just said, I want to ask you, you are an international lawyer and you've practiced for almost half a century, lecturing as a professor in international law. Just so we have a clarity on this, is it a crime as a U.S. citizen that it was originally born in another country trying to help your people under oppression to defend themselves by any means, either through financial donation? Is that a crime?
Well, I just cited to you the law that is on the books,
Okay.
and it's called the Neutrality Act. The
Yeah.
purpose of the law was or is to prevent U.S. citizens from getting embroiled in foreign wars in which the United States has not declared war. So that the law is designed to prevent U.S. citizens embroiling the United States into wars where the United States government has not declared a war. It's called the Neutrality Act. And we are seeing the law being applied, and individuals like the Kansas City Three, Francis Cheney, Claude Chi, and Lamnesto Langham, being prosecuted. And again, and the federal uh, criminal law is being used against them. Uh, and they have added some additional elements. That is, the individuals have conspired, that is, reached an agreement between each other uh, to commit these crimes. But the point that I am making is that other Americans are doing the exact same thing with respect to wars in Israel and also wars in the Ukraine. And they are not being prosecuted, which begs the question, why?
Amazing. Now, Professor Hinds, in July this year, you led a letter of leading Americans and international lawyers and bar associations to the Attorney General of the United States about the disparity in treatment between the Kansas City Three and other groups of U.S. citizens. What was the letter's message to the Attorney General, and what
Well,
did they call on to
well,
do in regards to the said disparity and the case of the Kansas City Three?
in July, uh, at my request, um, lawyers and jurists from uh, a number of about 4 international and national lawyers and jurist organizations, the African Bar Association, for example, having members, lawyers, and judges in 39 countries on the African continent, joined together with the International Association of Democratic Lawyers, which are lawyers and jurists from Africa, Asia, Europe, Latin America, and the Americas. They all joined with the National Conference of Black Lawyers of the United States and Canada, and the Chief Justice, the former Chief Justice of the government of Kenya. They all expressed their outrage of what is happening to the 3 Cameroonians, U.S. citizens of Cameroonian descent, to the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, and expressing their concern of the selective treatment, the disparate treatment, and the illegal treatment of these individuals, and calling for a full investigation of why they are being prosecuted, why, while others, as an example that I've given in uh, the conflicts in Ukraine and in Gaza with the Israelis, that their support by Americans to these armed conflicts, and these Americans who are supporting the combatants in Ukraine and in Israel are not similarly prosecuted. We have heard no response to date by the Attorney General, which also is disturbing.
Okay, let me just chip in this quick question there. In the last discussion we had, you actually mentioned that this case is political. Do you think that a switch in the White House could change this political atmosphere and bring some positive results? Hello, Professor Hinds.
Uh,
Can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you. The issue, uh, this is not a theoretical question.
Yeah.
Uh, you realize that the a change that has taken place in the White House uh, within the United States is not a neutral phenomenon. So if you look at who actually is the incumbent and who is the uh, going to be the 47th president of the United States, and look at their attitudes and their conduct, you will see that, or you may be able to ascertain whether or not how the new the president elect may view um,
The situation.
individuals who arrive in the United States as immigrants and who have attained citizenship.
Okay.
It is not a
Now,
neutral. It's not a neutral question.
yeah. So the point is, this was not going to be a part of our discussion. I was just trying to follow up with whatever you're saying there. Now let's get, because I actually documented some questions specifically for you. So that was just an interjection. Now, there's something from listening to you right now. It appears to be a double standard about how financial support for self-defense is handled in the court of law in the US, whether it's by the Kansas City Three against the Cameroonian military or by Americans aiding those in conflict with Russia and Hamas. Now, my question is, what are your thoughts on this double standard, specifically when it comes to self-defense?
Well, that has been exactly what I've been addressing over the last few minutes. The double standards are self-evident. You see this happening and being played out not in secret. Uh, if you look at the Wall Street Journal and Reuters, they have described precisely what is going on, from uh, uh, funds being raised to purchase tactical gear, uh, aid also being sent to uh, the Israeli self-defense forces, uh, especially those people who are living near Gaza. I mean, this is not something that is being done in secret. This is being done openly. The Justice Department of the United States is quite aware of this.
I think I appreciate the simplicity with the answers that you're giving. So I want to ask you, as a sound lawyer. In fact, you have practiced at high levels of law and international law for more than half a century. There are a lot of people in our day that would not even live 50 years, but this is you living way above that and practicing effectively in that domain. Now, in your opinion, how should the Department of Justice address the situation of the Kansas City Three to resolve it correctly?
Well, I think that what has been happening is that as a result of the outcry from the international community, and the outcry, I mean, the international legal community, um, and the concern that are being raised by uh, some elected officials. It calls for the Justice Department to re-examine what is being done now and what has been done historically in terms of the selective prosecution and the disparate treatment. There's no question about it that the case of these three Cameroonians of American, who are American citizens today, this case should be reviewed by the Attorney General's office in Washington, D.C., and appropriate steps should be taken to correct this unjust and disparate prosecution.
Now, just a question in support of what you have just said. If it is corrected, what should be the expected outcome? Now, a correction, what should we be expecting? Their release, or the case is cancelled or kicked out of court? What
Well,
do you really think?
the only way to remedy this disparate treatment is to treat these three uh, uh, United States citizens of Cameroonian descent as those citizens, uh, those other citizens who are supporting, uh, who are
Ukraine?
civilians supporting the wars
Ukraine?
in Ukraine and
Yeah,
in Israel. They should be treated uh,
like
in the
them.
same way. What does that mean?
Really?
They are not being prosecuted. I mean, I don't have to spell it out any clearer than that.
I think your answer is clear enough for everyone listening to you. I know you're a busy person. We have tried to connect you. You had some issues with your connectivity, and it took us some time to get you on air. So I don't have much again for you, but I have two very important questions before you make your closing remark. Now, the national and international campaign to address the double standard in the United States judicial system more fairly, which included the letter from leading lawyers that you initiated and organizations to the U.S. Attorney General, includes also educating the U.S. Congress about the issue. What message do you have to members of Congress, such as those on the Congressional Black Caucus, for example? What will be your message to them?
Well, I think that the Congressional Black Caucus historically have concerned themselves with the question of fairness, with the question uh, of uh, equality of treatment of all Americans, but in Americans of uh, African descent. I think that they should begin a conversation with the Justice Department on the question of disparity, and put the question to them of why the disparate treatment. And it is not just with the three U.S. citizens of Cameroonian descent. This is a historical issue. And if we go back over the last 50 or 60 years, you will see that the Justice Department have brought cases essentially of people of color who have supported or who have tried to assist on issues of self-determination. There has been this disparate treatment. They are prosecuted while other Americans are not. You've had, over the years, individuals who have been recruited, left the United States soil, and volunteered to fight against African liberation in Angola, in
Mhm.
Mozambique, in Namibia, and so on. Never prosecuted. So we need to begin this conversation, and hopefully the members of the Congressional Black Caucus would begin the conversation with the Justice Department with the objective of correcting this historical wrong.
That's amazing. Professor Hinds, you seem to have some insight of those who have done this. If I would analyze your involvement from day one, you are now introducing something new. You're getting your argument to history. So you're talking about the historicity of our claim. You have questioned the legality, double standard disparity. You're also talking about the political involvement. Now, for you to achieve this, you strategically you're advising the government. The last time we had an exclusive interview with you here, you inspired a significant movement within the Southern Cameroons community that gained traction on social media, particularly on Twitter X. Many of our viewers, those who are watching you now today, are eager to understand how this influence has shaped your current work. They went on Twitter after you advised them that Clochi and others are their own heroes, and then they have to make a mobilization. So they went on and respected your advice. Now they want to know today that how has their involvement helped your current work on behalf of them, or what further actions would you want to tell the people of Southern Cameroons and Bazonia today to enact that can help your strategic approach? What are some of the actions they can take to support your strategic approach, aside probably giving to you the resources that you needed? What will you tell our community to do to help you in this advocacy?
Um, I am convinced that what happens in the courtroom, to a large extent, would be influenced by what happens outside of the courtroom. There are political decisions that have to be made, and those decisions are being made by the Justice Department in Washington, D.C. But if I were to make any type of recommendations to the broader community, international community, people of Southern Cameroons, it is that they should let their voices be heard in Washington, D.C. There should be a campaign, a letter writing campaign, with thousands, millions of letters being written, directed to the Attorney General of the United States, demanding that there be equal treatment for Francis Cheney, Claude Chi, and Lamnester Langun. There should be thousands, hundreds of thousands of voices being heard. Because I'm convinced that only as a result of mass support would the courts in the United States recognize that these individuals were not acting on their own, but they were supporting the people, supporting the struggle, supporting the cries for freedom from the people, the Anglophone people of Southern Cameroon.
Thank you very much, Professor Hinds, for your time and for all the encouragement. We hope that as the situation progresses, we would have the chance to have another conversation with you so we can get some updates. On behalf of the people of Ambazonia and Southern Cameroons, I'd like to thank you for the great work you're doing and your passion seeing justice be served for not just the Kansas City Three, but many other people of color, oppressed people of color within the United States of America. If you would have any final words to say, you could just go ahead and say them as we round up this segment of this program.
No, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts and my observations with you and with your audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Hinds. Fellow Amazonians, ladies and gentlemen, it's been one-on-one with Professor Hinds, Professor Lennox Hinds. And you've heard from him yourself. He's been doing tremendously well. I was actually cautioned not to even mention everything that they've been doing at the background. So we tried to strategically provide as much as possible to everyone who is involved or every Ambazonian who is listening. You have a duty, and I'm sure that's something that he did not tell you on air. Aside from the Twitter warrior or the X warriors and the social media soldiers, you have a duty to finance the efforts, because the group of lawyers, the lobbying, the congressional caucus, the Black Congressional Caucus, the congressmen, the lobbies that the government is employing to make sure that the right offices are approached and the proper solutions are provided requires money, lots of money. And I want to thank all those who have been participating unwaveringly, generously in these efforts, to say that this is a time, like the president would say, it is a time for you to do and to do even more. We are close. We are very close and very, 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 very close. This is a high time for you to push it and to just push it one more time to ensure that we cross the finish line. There's so much more to be analyzed from another lawyer, Barrister Tim Besea, that will be analyzing with Undaunted in just a few minutes what we have discussed here tonight. I may join them in that discussion, but if not, on Saturday, you have me and the lawyers getting into the in-depths of other aspects of the Kansas City Three in wait of the court's outcome. Right after the break, Undaunted will be back. For those who are watching us, keep sharing. Stay tuned.
because I value my past. The memories of yesterday can never be changed, but they give me a reason to live again. There is a reason I am here today, but there is no reason you lost your lives. You were called abusive names, deprived of rights to be humans, slayed because of who you were born. I am lighting a candle as the sign of resilience. I'm paying a tribute. You left a legacy, and I'm a fruit from the love you sowed. Let's say never again to genocide. There should be no war. There should be no genocide. Anyway, let's say never again to genocide. Let's say never again to genocide. I was young, I still needed you, but you were taken away from me too soon. If I had one wish, it would be seeing you again. Today we're strong men and women, even though you are not here to see. We're carrying on to make you feel proud out there, watching down on us. I am lighting a candle as the sign of resilience. I'm paying a tribute. You left a legacy, and I'm a fruit from the love you sowed. Let's say never again to genocide. There should be no war. There should be no genocide. Anyway, let's say never again to genocide. Let's say never again to genocide.
November 28, 2022, one of those days in our checkered history when the dream of freedom, the yearning for a piece of home to call our own, was met with chains not of iron, but of injustice, tightening around the risk of three honorable men, Claude Chi, Francis Chinye, Nestor Langme.
I saw a double standard being used by the federal courts of the United States and by the Justice Department. The unfairness, the double standards being played out with respect to the Kansas City Three.
In Lee's Summit, Missouri, St. Paul, Minnesota, Buffalo, New York, the chill of that morning was not just a whisper of winter. It was the cold grip of betrayal, as if the very ideas of liberty and justice on which their adopted nation prided itself had turned their backs on them.
Now, what's the difference between a terrorist and a freedom fighter? George Washington, who is the father of the United States, he was considered to be a terrorist. If the British had captured him, they would string him up. But what did we call George Washington? A freedom fighter.
Because these men dared to dream, dream of liberating Southern Cameroons from decades of usurpation, belligerent occupation, and of oppression by French Cameroon.
We must raise our voices that justice be done.
But to their detractors, to those who wield the word terrorism like a blunt weapon, their aspiration for freedom was a threat to be squashed. The news branded them conspirators, aligning their noble cause with the vilest of accusations.
Begin a campaign focused on the members of Congress in your district.
Yet not once did the term terrorism truly reflected their actions or intentions. In the eyes of justice, they were yet to be judged, but in the courtroom of public opinion, fueled by corrupt media and proxies of Biya, they had already been condemned, denied bail, their future hung in the uncertain balance of a trial that seemed as distant as the dream of liberation itself.
Do not allow the United States government to define your heroes. These three young men have put their lives on the line for you.
Yeah.
They are your hero.
Good evening and welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. Well, you have just been watching exclusive discussion one-on-one with Tarh Paddy King featuring the veteran Professor Lennox Hinds, who was Nelson Mandela's U.S. Attorney and Counsel, as well as a criminal defense and international human rights lawyer, who was also counsel to the African National Congress of South Africa and the government of South Africa. Well, Hinds is the founder of the National Conference of Black Lawyers and a former chair of the Administration of Justice program at Rutgers University. Well, it is at this juncture we'll begin Undaunted tonight, taking a look at where he stopped on the Kansas City 3. Looking at the complex and controversial case of the Kansas City 3, Cloud Chi, Francis Chinyi, and La Nesto Langmi, who have been detained for over 2 years already in the United States without bail. These American citizens of Amazonian descent face charges related to supporting self-defense efforts in Amazonia, which has been embroiled in conflict since La Republic's government declared war on Amazonia's independence movement in 2016. The charges stem from alleged financial support and facilitation for Amazonian forces, which the Kansas City 3 and fellow Amazonians argue is a response to severe human rights abuses, with proofs aligned by the La Republic government, documented by groups like Human Rights Watch. Well, the case has sparked intense debate, especially when compared to how the United States government has responded to American citizens supporting other international causes such as aid sent to Ukraine or Israel. Supporters of the Kansas City 3, including Amazonian leaders, highlight what they see as a double standard, with President Samuel Ikomi-Sako questioning why Americans supported Amazonian self-defense face legal jeopardy, while others aiding Ukrainian efforts against Russia and other nations' aggression are often celebrated. Well, efforts to release the Kansas City Three have included motions to dismiss the case on grounds of selective prosecution and the broader political context of Ambazonia's struggle for self-determination. In 2020, the United States Senate passed a resolution calling for peaceful resolution efforts for the Cameroon conflict, and the Canadian government even offered to facilitate negotiations, though the Cameroonian government has resisted mediation efforts and instead pursued a military strategy. While as legal proceedings continue, the case of the Kansas City Three of Ambazonian origin raises questions about the United States legal system's consistency and its role in global conflict, especially where humanitarian and political issues intersect with national security laws. Well, this issue resonates as Ambazonian communities seek justice, emphasizing the need for fair treatment on the United States law for Americans supporting human rights and self-determination causes worldwide. Well, with this, we'll get on to the prime headlines to see more of the news on Undaunted tonight. Well, Undaunted tonight, we'll take a look at Thibaut Nage's diplomatic effort for Amazonia as pro-Amazonian momentum grows with key appointments in the United States. And on the home front, we'll see yet another case of insecurity as a missing 12-year-old girl was found dead in Kumba 17 days after going missing. Colonial La Republic's legacy of neglect in Amazonia forces Ambazonians to take the development of their nation in their own hands, is another report from the home front, as well as workers of Cameroon Development Corporation, CDC, going on the streets protesting for unpaid wages. And on the African scene, we'll take a look at Moroccan journalist sentenced amid international outcry over press freedom. And on the global scene, Chinese laser energy weapon system have been spotted in Iran, is a report we'll look at. Well, we were just watching the veteran Professor Lennox Hinds, and in his words right there, when asked by Mr. Tarh Paddy King the way forward, his opinions and suggestion was treat citizens of Southern Cameroon decent, like the ones supporting Ukraine. Treat citizens of Southern Cameroon like the ones supporting Ukraine. And he also passed a message to the conventional Black caucus, the congressional Black caucus, who primarily concern themselves with the question of fairness and equality. He passed a message to them and believes that bodies like these should question as well the justice system of the United States on the subject of disparity. Well, started with this, we'll get to Barrister Mbasia, who is joining us on Undaunted tonight. We'll get to him to hear his thoughts with regards to this. Good evening, Barrister Mbasia.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes, it's
And
always a
thank you for
pleasure
giving me
to
the
have you.
opportunity to add or clarify what our learned guest said. You see, there's so much at stake, and sometimes we miss it, even when we explain our cause. We're talking about the Kansas City Three, who are indicted and are in prison for almost 2 years without release. And our learned guest told us something. He said there's a law in America called the Neutrality Act, which forbids American citizens going to war unless the war has been declared by the United States. I cited the issue of Ukraine and Hamas and Palestine, where Americans are fighting there, where Americans are contributing money in addition to fighting. They are buying weapons. And then you ask, why are we being so different? Why are they different to what is happening? The problem, I think, is when you go to these people, they would act on what you tell them. And sometimes we miss the point. And this is what I'm trying to say. These people have been indicted. I had the opportunity to read the indictment several times. The indictment does not suggest that there's a war in Cameroon. They carefully avoided the idea of a war in the indictment. So just reading the indictment and saying that she and the rest were fighting, they're like Ukrainians. A guest who looks at that thing, a senator, someone who just goes to look at it, you will not see any element of war. They carefully left it out. They're simply charged for promoting terrorism. What is terrorism? If you take a cutlass or your spear and go and kill one policeman, two policemen, that's a terrorist act. If you just go and do like Choyaba does, kidnap a few people, that's a terrorist act. And so that's what they're focused in the Justice Department on. And what did they describe the three Kansas people? In that indictment, they are described clearly, not even as fighters, they are described as civil leaders, elected officials of the counties who were raising money to do this and that. A county is an organized organization. If the counties are in the United States, they are legal. And the other thing they will say to show that there was terrorism going on is the side they ensure the one I adopted a certain Cardinal to me. Adopting somebody like that is an act of terrorism. So these people in the Justice Department have been very, very careful to hide their tracks. So even the people who hired to go there, if they look at the indictment, they don't see anything called terrorism there. They don't see anything called war there. So we should rephrase our story. We tell them we should start with the fact that there's ongoing war, and these people, even though they are charged for money, they were not buying arms. By the indictment, they were city officials trying to assist the needy at home. They were elected officials of the counties, and so it looks like the State Department people, the FBI people who filed these charges were so clever to keep out the element of war, which we have been emphasizing on, which we have been saying that the Americans are going to fight in Ukraine. Americans are going to fight in Israel. Because in the eyes of the United States, even though they violate the Neutrality Act, there's a war, there's an active war going on there. We see a war in Ukraine. You see bombs falling there. We see a war in Gaza, fighting there. So because our own has not taken that stage, they hide the element of war. And so when we say this, well, Americans are going here and fighting a war. You look, somebody goes to help us, looks at that thing, and say, but what are you charging these people for? He says, no, just terrorism. So I left with only one arm of it. So what is a terrorist act? So what I'm trying to say is that we should try to make the point that for 5 years, there's an ongoing war. I'm sure we have images to show to our lobbyists, to our supporters, that this is war here. People have been raising money not to go and buy arms as we've been buying to go and help Palestinians or people from Ukraine. By their own indictment, they raised arms as leaders of the community, civil community, to help the victims of whatever thing was going on. There could be war, it could be a disaster like what is happening in the northern Cameroon. It could be a disaster like that thing that happened at the Falaise de Cham. These people, we who are here, anywhere else, right, who could organize, buy medication, buy clothing. And we organize in the name, for example, in this instant case, they call themselves county officials. That's what the indictment talks of the three. You say A, he was a county chair. A, B, he was a county treasurer. And so I think this is a missing link that probably will be missing. Then Paddy asked a question. Now before Paddy asked the question, he talked of the story of the visit. The delegation, he led a powerful delegation of everybody you can imagine in the world. The best experts that you can imagine in the world, that he made this thing. And then, of course, they went to the Justice Department. Since July, they have had no reply. They were received there. So whatever information they left there is still there. They were received. Why no reply? We don't know. But then, why no reply? You go to the next question. Paddy asks if he believes that a change of government, as is coming to happen, can have a difference. You try to say, no, we don't have any difference because the man coming in is very different. It's just going to be the same person. No, but it can have a difference. Because he goes on to tell us his last advice. When Paddy asked, what do we do next? The answer was, make sure their voices are heard in Washington, D.C. But before saying that, make sure your voices are heard in Washington, D.C., he said something. He said, in the case, something will happen in the courtroom. What happens in the courtroom is influenced by what is happening outside the courtroom. In the courtroom, you get essentially lawyers and judges. Outside the courtroom, you get essentially politicians who act based on their political motivations. And so this is a good opportunity for us. Whatever thing has happened, a new political outlook is coming to Washington, D.C. And so we must capitalize on that, because the people who caused the indictment of the Kansas City Three were politically motivated. It was not a question of just doing this justice. No, they have political motivation. The State Department, the Justice Department, led by the Attorney General, is a political appointee. The judges hearing the matter are politically nominated. And so his last advice, I think, may your voices be heard in Washington, D.C. is the most important thing. We have to redouble our efforts. But before I leave this segment, I think this segment was essentially made for us to understand this. And for the public of Amazonia to know that if the Kansas City Three are still there, it is not because we lack the efforts. We have done the maximum. From his own narration, the coalition that was formed to fight this case is a powerful coalition. And I can only say, I said before, we're going to succeed. It's a question of time. We're going to succeed. So that's what I take from that interview. And I think it was a very good thing. As Paddy says, these people, they are not talking there for nothing. We hire them, we pay them some money. If somebody says they're working for nothing, no, we need the money there for them to continue to work. And where do you get the money? Draft, and draft. Over to you.
All right, Barrister Besia. Well, looking at the situation of the Kansas City Three, even Dr. Martin Mungwa had pointed to the disparities, pointing to the different treatments when it comes to these Amazonian bonds. There's Americans from African origin who are treated differently from those others who support Israel or other international parties at war who support the defense system. An example will be those who support Ukraine. And Dr. Mungwa talked about it extensively, pointing to the disparities. Now, what is set in place to show these disparities to the U.S. system, or what other efforts are underway to make the U.S. Justice system gain insight into the disparities going on, and how do the legal team for this Kansas City Three plan to bring this out more so it could get them the freedom they need from these undeserved sentence they are undergoing right now?
I think the professor had a very good answer for that, and we should learn from it. He said the disparity is historical. They are not doing this just to this Kansas City Three. This thing has been going on against the blacks forever in the United States. So if you are a minority underprivileged, you need to put an extra effort to get your own matter heard. There's disparity. Nobody does that.
So that's what
This
we're asking
disparity,
now. What is set in
yeah,
place to make it?
yes, the disparity stems from our color, and therefore you have to fight it. In order to fight and break down the walls to equality, you need to make an extra effort, which is what we're doing, which is why we're hiring all these people to sing the song for us, to touch the doors that we cannot touch by ourselves. And discrimination can be rare, it can be imagined. It can be for different reasons. It is not just because we're a minority. How many Jews are in the United States? Very few, but they are Jews. But they've penetrated the system to a point that you cannot even call Israel out here. You'll be prosecuted for doing that. Because they have knocked the doors. They have gotten into the areas of influence. And so I think he has given us the thing. He says disparity, as Bongo says, is historical. It has been there forever. Blacks, whatever thing the blacks have in this country, the right to vote, the right to be free from slavery, had been a daunted and uphill task. But they've gotten them. They fight those things and they get. And we're fighting this thing, as I've said, we will get it. We just need to continue the effort and redouble it where necessary. We cannot deny, nobody denies there's disparity. Nobody denies that disparity is injustice. People just keep a blind eye. It is common in America. If we were looking about this, just talk about the elections, it was an open thing. Trump said, I will send away everybody who is not a member of this country. These who are strangers here are the minority. And what happened? He was voted in. He won the election. We cannot challenge that. And so that disparity has been there forever, historical. And so, again, he mentioned examples of Americans who enlisted to go and fight in Mozambique, to go and fight in Angola, to go and fight sometimes even in South Africa. But they enlisted because the American society recognized there's a war there. Up to this point, we've never even had our own boys or girls enlist to go and fight in Cameroon. Whatever support we give has been indirect, has been very, very, very minimal, civil. And so that is what it is. I think we've learned a lot from that interview. And I hope it will help us. Over to you.
All right, Barton, basically at this point, I would say this is like the most important concern about the Kansas City 3 for Ambazonians, which is what diplomatic or legislative efforts, if any, are underway to address the situation of the Kansas City 3? What diplomatic or legal efforts? And how might these efforts that are underway impact the United States relations with Southern Cameroons and La Republique generally? How does it affect them home and abroad?
Well, there are legal efforts underway, ongoing. There are political efforts ongoing. The team, Dr. Professor Hinds, is a lawyer. He has led a delegation, a coalition of several law societies to the courts and to the Justice Department. So that is properly being handled. There is another diplomatic aspect which is ongoing right now, which is to hire people, experts in the field, who are knocking the political doors, as he said, for our voices to be heard. They are doing it as we speak. And so we have not missed any of those pointers. We're there. But again, we are not going to be tired. We shall only continue and continue until they are free, if we have the means. Because none of those doors that are knocking are being knocked for nothing. Either they be political or legal. But we have engaged both arms. The legal approach, which is being led by Professor Hinds, is a lawyer. He has told us of the delegation of powerful legal experts he took to the Justice Department. That's law. There's another arm being led by another diplomat, American high diplomat, which is knocking the political doors, knocking the senators, knocking at the doors of senators, knocking at the doors of Congress people. In fact, what they call the black lawyers, the black politicians in Congress. We're doing all that. Again, Those things need money. Let the family of the Kansas City 3 rest assured that we're not leaving any stone unturned. Let Ambazonians who did not know that we have been fighting and the people hopefully should be released. We have 2 pointers in our favor. The change of political climate in Washington City is going to automatically lead to also the change in the Justice Department. The present Attorney General, who is a Democrat, is on his way out by virtue of the elections. Come, January 20, just 2 months, somebody else will sit there. He still be called Justice Department official. He'll be a big man there. But he'll be coming in with the perspective of the own government, the Republicans. We'll be dealing with the Attorney General of the Democrats. We don't know what they will do, but the episode said they will change, like it or not. The change might very much be in our favor, or maybe not in our favor, but there will be a change. Over to you.
All right, thank you, Barrister Mbasia, for that wonderful contribution. We have just one more report of concern for you to react to. But before we get to that, we're taking a look at the key appointments and potential support from the United States impacting Amazonia somehow. Well, we know that the Southern Cameroon's Amazonia movement, long struggling for recognition and justice, is witnessing new support from influential voices within the United States, especially following recent developments under the newly elected President Donald Trump's administration. Now, these developments present Amazonia a unique opportunity to advance its cause. Now, the former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Thibault Naj, under President Trump, has been vocal. He has been vocal in recent weeks about his support for the Amazonian cause. In a significant tweet today, Naj expressed his enthusiasm for Trump's plan to nominate Senator Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, praising Rubio's long-standing commitments to justice for Southern Cameroon's Amazonia. Naj emphasized the need for unity amongst Amazonians to strengthen their stance on the international stage. Now, his tweet says, delighted President Trump will nominate Senator Rubio for U.S. Secretary of State. When I was Assistant Secretary of State, Rubio was among very few members of Congress showing great interest in justice for Southern Cameroonians. Amazonians now need unity more than ever for Amazonians to make their case. Well, Naj's frequent remarks about Amazonia signal an unusual level of advocacy from a former official of his stature. His support could act as a form of public relations for Amazonians, amplifying the issue among the United States policymakers and global audiences. His stance suggests a growing awareness and willingness amongst the United States decision makers to address the unresolved crisis in Southern Cameroon. Now, among the appointments in President Trump's new administration, Lee Zeldin, a former congressman with known pro-Amazonian views, has been chosen to lead the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. Zeldin has a history of supporting the Southern Cameroon's movement and advocating for the international recognition of an independent Amazonia. His presence in the Trump administration adds a notable pro-Amazonian voice at a high level, likely creating ripples in the United States foreign policy circles. Zeldin's stance has already raised concerns in Yaoundé, where the Cameroonian government may face increased international scrutiny. Naj has hinted that more allies of the Amazonian cause could be appointed to key roles, which could also apply for the diplomatic pressure on Cameroon's government. He noted that under previous administrations, Cameroon received minimal pushback for its treatment to its minority neighboring Southern Cameroon's population, but expressed hope for a shift under the current leadership. Now, Amazonians can actually leverage on this opportunity. This moment of heightened visibility presents Amazonia with a pivotal opportunity to solidify their case on the global stage. By capitalizing on the advocacy of figures like Naj and Zeldin, Amazonian leaders can strengthen their movement's public relations, build alliances, and advocate for concrete policy changes. Well, as Nad emphasized, unity within the Amazonian movement is indeed essential. A coordinated front can help Amazonian leaders clearly convey their objectives, increasing credibility with policymakers and international audiences. A unity that, of course, President Sako always talks about, unity of purpose. Well, given Rubio's pending role as Secretary of State, Amazonian representatives could reach out proactively, framing their cause as aligned with human rights and self-determination values Rubio has reportedly supported. By utilizing Naj's consistent advocacy and the appointment of pro-Amazonian figures, the movement can launch targeted media and diplomatic campaigns in the United States and other key international forums, where these efforts can raise awareness and place additional pressure on the La Republique government to address the conflict in southern Cameroon. As a new administration assumes office in the United States, the Amazonian movement has this rare window of opportunity to amplify its message. With advocates like Thibaut Naj and Lee Zeldin in key positions and the potential influence of Senator Rubio, Amazonia has gained indeed significant support, you could say. But Amazonian leaders and supporters must act decisively and strategically to take advantage of this momentum, building international alliances that may help to bring the long sought after justice and autonomy that Amazonia has been striving for. Barrister Mbesia.
Stand with Ambazonia. Empower ABC Amba TV. We are calling on Ambazonians around the world to unite and uplift ABC Amba TV, Ambazonian Broadcasting Corporation. In this critical time of war, ensuring the station's survival is more important than ever. But what does ABC Amba TV truly represent for Ambazonia?
At the heart of Ambazonia's war of independence, ABC Amba TV stands as a beacon. Years of recolonization, annexation, and French Cameroon's oppressive occupation of the southern Cameroon's Ambazonia have led to our exclusion. Our identity was hidden, our history distorted, our sovereignty denied.
Queen of England is aware that the British Southern Cameroons were never a colony under France.
Since its inception in 2018, ABC Amba TV has been our lifeline.
Months of diplomacy have failed to resolve the crisis as fear grows over an imminent Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Our work in the dark is our chance to tell our stories to the world, to give voice to the voiceless, and broadcast the truth of our struggle.
We are serious about executing this revolution.
It has become a vital arm of our government in wartime, making diplomacy achievable and showcasing our untold stories.
ABC Amba, you guys know how important ABC is for this, our quest for international recognition.
Your donations can make a world of difference. Every bit of support helps keep our stories alive, our presence known, and our fight in the global conversation.
Oh, you're welcome back. We still have with us in the studios Barrister Mbesia, looking at this impact of not just Naj's advocacy, but the potential of these people put in place, these people put in Senate and other positions under the new administration, and how they have also been vocal in the past about the Southern Cameroon's cause. We're being optimistic about it. Are we right to be? And what do you think about this?
Well, I don't know those who believe me, who don't believe me, but this is where we are. Remember, for the past 4 years, we're getting this information from Thibaut Naj. Thibaut Naj was in the administration in Yaoundé just 4 years ago. And for the past 4 years that they have not been in the administration, he has been on our news items every day because of his tweets. And I've cautioned here many times that these diplomats see further than we do. They may say what you don't like. It is simply sometimes because you don't understand. And I had warned our own brothers and sisters who have taken on at the soul of criticism, cursing him, doing whatever thing he did. I was alone. In fact, people even insulted me for taking that position. But this is Tibu Nash telling us what we did not know,
True.
telling us where the chips lie.
True.
Who of us knew Marco Rubio or their positions? We did not know.
Yeah.
Who of us knew the intentions of this senator man being appointed? Zerdin. We did not know. But he has given us the pointer. So these are the people who matter. I know their opinion in this issue. They are going to the White House now as senior officials. You have good partners there. Who is telling us this? Tibu Nash, the man that we have vilified so many times on this very TV. The person whose opinion sometimes I sought to defend and I was insulted. But there he is anyway. He has given us people who never knew. If he didn't say that, we'll never know those are our allies because we don't know their feelings.
True.
But they are coming to the White House. He has told us those are the guys. He knows them personally. He knows their stance. And they're coming to the White House as senior officials. That has to do with our cause. So he's advising us that those are the people who will help you. We ask a question. He's urging unity. Let us go meet these people with the unity of our claim. It does not mean that we must go and catch Choayaba, catch Anu to come and join us in that team. Unity in this own approach. It's not that you must go and catch all those people. You are giving the example. He said in Yaoundé. See, if you sit in an office and 3-4 groups come to tell you the same thing about something, giving different opinions. Sometimes you don't want to receive them anymore because you don't know what you want to say. He has said that publicly here. So anyway, he's not going to do it for us. He has just given us the pointers. Those are the people coming to the administration who are very, very sympathetic to your cause. And in the streets, he ends up, Southern Cameroon will get what they want. Because Yaoundé has refused to listen to advice. That is all in the streets. 3-4 months ago, he said, Southern Cameroon will get what it wants before the elections. So that was the other time some of us tried to see something positive in what he was saying. But whatever is the case, the important thing is that is a highly placed former diplomat. He's a Republican. He knows the policies of the Republicans. He's now outside there. He has been an insider. He knows the individual Republicans by name, by their office. They eat together. So can we get something out of this? I think we can and we should. For those who are concerned, those who are leading this cause in Congress, at the level of the political setting in Washington, D.C., as the professor said, to make our voices heard in Washington, D.C. You go to Washington, D.C., you're going to the White House. These are people through who you can pass to get your voices heard. Washington, D.C. is not going to sit in an office and drink beer. These are the people who matter, he has told us. Go there, strategize well, go there with a good message. According to him, you will get the independence. It's just a question of time. So I think we are coming down to the truth. We are so lucky that our revolution has gone so fast. Within 8 years, we've learned so much. And these are living people. Tibu Nash is not a dead man. He's still going down the street there. If I met him today, I would take a drink with him. And so that is how it is. I think we should be very, very thankful that we have this sort of people still there. If left to some of us, Tibu Nash will not be saying anything anymore about Ambazonia. He will just have kept quiet. Because we've insulted him, we've called him a traitor, whatever name we gave him. But he has persisted, he's still there, and he's giving all this crucial information. Can he be right? I think he's right. If you respect him, that's my view. If you don't want to do it, so be it. It's just an opinion. But he's not just giving you an opinion, he's giving you facts. But my support for him, for his approach, is an opinion. Because he has said, let me recall this, he said that if you want to depend only on 1608, he said, it's not. I will call it over the phone I will call it over this program for days and weeks. So when we go to these two senators, two senior officials of Trump, come January 20th. How are we going to do it? Are we going to start chanting 1608? Or how are we going to do it? Those who are going to meet him or meet them, you have to strategize. It's a question of priority. Where do you start from and where do you end? That's all what it is. And I thought that's what we were saying. If you go to every office and say, oh, result 1608, who in Washington DC doesn't know that? Who in Washington, London politicians who were there were in the United Nations doesn't, they know that. So start with what is important. These are people who are sympathetic to your cause. And we'll get what we want. In his own words, we can say, thank God that we still have him there. Thank God that he's able to give us these guidelines. It is for us to capitalize on them. Over to you.
Yeah, speaking of our optimism about this report, how might Thibault Naji's support for Ambazonian justice influence the United States foreign policy towards the Southern Cameroons, particularly if more figures in the United States government share his stance?
No, the only thing Thibault Nash, like any other senior diplomat in Washington, D.C., is to give us this guy like he's prohibited by law. Right. He cannot even work for us. He cannot go, he cannot become a lobbyist. But he's chatting like you and me, giving you vital information. It is left for you to capitalize on it. If we decide to go and see him, you can see him. And you talk like me and you are talking here. But by law, he cannot work for us until he spends a number of years out of service. He's retired officially from the State Department. Okay. Someone can still come to come and work there. But because he is a former member, he knows these people, he can give us these guidelines. If we want to approach him, we can approach him privately. And say, for example, now you know Rubio very, very well. You know what type of beer he does, you know what type of thing he does. How do we talk to him? He'll give you that advice for those who know him. Things like that. So that's the role he can play, which is why you don't see any other diplomat in active service on social media, tweeting, things like that, because they are not allowed to do it. Over to you.
So, Barrister Basia, one other thing he said in his tweet that was quite striking was when he talked of unity, saying this is talking about how this particular era for Ambazonia is quite an opportunity with let's call it updates and the information he gave out about these people who most likely will lean towards the side of Ambazonia. He talked about unity, saying that's one thing that Ambazonia and its government should work on. We've had the president talk a couple times about unity of purpose, because certain types of unity groups end up destroying the sole purpose of the Ambazonian cause. Now, how can Ambazonians put this into consideration and put this at play to move the struggle forward to Buea?
I think his talk of unity, he is talking from practical experience. He was in Yaoundé. Before going to Yaoundé, he was in charge of the consulate in Douala. He sat in Yaoundé there from 2019 when the war started. Will you imagine that he started in Yaoundé, for example? I'm just imagining. And who is sending a delegation there? Okay, go and see the ambassador. He's receiving a delegation to say something. Another delegation is coming from the IGK, from Kondengi. They say, well, let us support, for example, Canada. Another delegation is coming from AGOFC. Another one is coming from Apanga. ADF, what you call it? That's what you call his own group. So this man was speaking from practical experience. It was not imagination. He sat in that office in Yaoundé, where most of these things were happening. Where I guess they were our own people who came to the embassy so many times with different groups. If, for example, the Sisiko delegation came there, and then somebody said, no, I don't receive Sako delegation on this issue. What would you say? You say, don't regard anything of Sako because we don't recognize him, for example. Things like that. So, what will you do? I think that's the practical thing he's talking about. Because he has lived it. So that advice is not misconceived. If we don't want to take it, so be it. But he's just advising us that if we can have this unity of presentation, that would be a good idea. But Sako could go there, the government can go there. IGK can go there. If they are saying the same message, that will be reinforcing. It only goes back, for example, when we go there, I'll just give the example of Canada talks. I will say, these people are calling Canada talks to destroy the Switzerland initiative. We want you, Mr. Ambassador, to use your position and cause the American people not to support this thing called Canada. And then we leave and just trying to illustrate. IGK comes in and says, look, Canada talk is the best. We want to go there. So what will you do as an ambassador? What are you going to recommend to your to your government in Washington, D.C.? So this is, if they were going there and delivering the same message, that would be understandable. That would be understandable. So if you don't want to go, you don't want to be going in a factional way, they should be able to refine the message and go with the same message. Because if you come there 10 times and repeat the same message, it sinks. 20 people have come in and said the same thing. But when you go in and say different things to solve the same problem that he knows, they have lived there, he knows people are dying, they have seen dead people in Bamenda and Boya, they have seen it. They are anxious to find a solution, not so much because they love it, but because they also have an interest in peace in that country, because they have their own interest. And then you are coming in with these things. The ambassadors, the officials are human beings. What will you do yourself if you were sitting there? So that's just an advice he's giving us. I've always said, if he gives us an advice, let us exploit it, how best to use it. If you don't like it, so be it. But we should not criticize him for giving that advice. That's just my point. Over to you.
Point well passed across. Thank you, Barrister Basia, for yet again joining us on Undaunted tonight. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much. Let me go.
And then we'll move on to the rest of the news on Undaunted tonight. Well, we see the impact of the ongoing war in Amazonia, which is harming the economy and some institutions like the CDC, Cameroon Development Corporation. Workers of the Cameroon Development Corporation took to the streets on Tuesday, November 12th, in Tico, Atlantic Zone, the Federal Republic of Amazonia, demanding their unpaid wages. Earlier today, the disgruntled protesters in their numbers with peace flags in their hands, chanting that the CDC general manager should be fired. They chanted, Unje Franklin must go, as they walked the streets. Contrary enough, the CDC general manager has been a recipient of several local awards and recognition this year alone, according to organizers for his service at the helm of the institution. Inscriptions and placards planted before the CDC office demanded the payment of 55 months of unpaid wages. It read, CDC workers, we want arrears salaries that have not been paid months prior. Before the advent of the ongoing war in Amazonia, the CDC Corporation, which used to be the largest employer in the country after the state of the Cameroons, is now facing several setbacks. Funny enough, with the weight of the war on the colonial regime, the regime is still pressing on with the military option to tackle the war in Amazonia rather than addressing the root causes of grievances. Funds have been diverted to foot La Republic's war bills on Amazonia by equipping its army and having nothing left to pay its workers of the CDC. While still in Amazonia, we see decades of lies and failed promises as frustration mounts in Amazonia over decaying infrastructure and escalating living costs. Comedian Tembu Daniel Ebere, popularly known as 237 Town Crier, took to the streets in Bamenda to expose the colonial government's persistent neglect. To reveal the colonial government's persistent neglect, holding placards that read, Fix our roads, Stop intimidation and harassment. Ebere's protest resonates with the entire southern Cameroons, long marginalized under annexation, intimidated, whose basic needs have been disregarded by the colonial administration. His protests reveal the grim reality behind La République. Decades of broken promises, lies, and failed development projects, leaving Amazonians to suffer the consequences in both daily hardships and tragic loss of life. Since the onset of the war in 2016, Amazonians have lived under the strain of not only violence, but also severe neglect in infrastructure, health services, and economic development. Road remains in such disrepair that drivers often have to reroute through gas stations to avoid impassable sections, and essential trade routes are rendered useless due to the terrible and dilapidated state of the roads in Ambazonia. Well, it is also interesting to find out that due to the neglect by the colonial regime, Amazonians have decided to take matters into their own hands. Amazonians have decided to take matters into their own hands by being their own constructors, developing their own nation, developing the roads, since the La Republique has decided to abandon, because Ambazonian roads and everything they owe Ambazonia since the annexation of Ambazonia and since the unholy union of Ambazonia. Well, interesting, we see that while there are impassable roads and accidents occurring on this very terrible state of roads around the entire Ambazonia, we're seeing La Republique absconding from the duties it owes Ambazonia. And we're seeing that instead of Ambazonians to continue to cry and mourn, they have decided to take matters into their own hands and build their roads, contributing sums of money to make their roads better. Let's take a look at this road, and then you understand why Ambazonians have been so desperate enough to decide to build their roads themselves. Let's take a look at this road.
Ceux qui ont les connaissances, puissent appeler. Voilà un bus de trésor voilà, qui vient de faire un accident au niveau des Tengue. Un bus immatriculé LT 917 HD. Donc tous ceux qui ont les connaissances puissent appeler. Un bus de trésor, voilà, ça vient de faire ton nom là.
Well, despite claims by the Ministry of Public Works to have rehabilitated 2,900 kilometers of road since 2016, the reality on the ground paints a far bleaker picture. Communities throughout Amazonia remains encumbered by inadequate infrastructure, putting lives at risk daily. Recent events such as collision of the Douala-Yaoundé road that claimed several lives and a landslide in the Shang that left at least 12 dead serves as tragic reminders of the colonial government's disregard for the southern Cameroons under its annexation. In similar cases, Amazonians have decided to take their nation's development into their own hands, seeing how futile waiting on the colonial regime is. In the most recent case, the people of Ashong village in the Federal Republic of Amazonia have raised over 16.5 million franc CFAs to improve their long-neglected water supply system. The initiative, organized by the Ashong Social, Cultural, and Development Association, ASCUDA, has thrown more light on the complacent La Republique government's ongoing failure to address critical infrastructure needs. On November 9, 2024, natives of Ashong gathered in Chico to raise funds for the water infrastructure. This came in handy, looking at La Republique du Cameroon's government has woefully failed to ease access to the basic commodity for the residents, water. ASCODA's President General Mbatim John emphasized that the village has faced water challenges since its facilities were built in 1981, with no significant upgrades since then. It has finally, in 2024, decided to develop their community themselves, knowing the promises of development from the colonial regime are neither new nor trustworthy. Despite claims of planning an additional 3,000 kilometers road by 2030, Amazonians have yet to see any meaningful changes. Colonial President Paul Biya, 42 years rule has brought only beautiful roads filled with potholes, muddy patches, and erosions. These are the words of Iberi, pointing out sarcastically in his protest. The harsh truth is that each year of neglect deepens the divide between colonial La Republic's promises and the lived reality of Ambazonians. For the Amazonian population, this latest demonstration is more than just a call to fix roads. It is an outcry for basic rights and dignity that have been systematically denied. With international attention increasingly focused on the colonial injustices facing Amazonia, there is renewed hope that meaningful change may be possible, but sadly, only at the hands of Ambazonians and not the colonial La Republique. Until the colonial government takes genuine action to address these issues, Amazonia are left to bear the consequences of neglect, a heavy price paid in accidents, injuries, and lives lost on this dangerous road. Well, since the war in 2016, more insecurity has surfaced. Sadly, the body of a 12-year-old Maloba Magdalene has been discovered at the Nkalinkum Junction in Kumba, 17 days after she was reported missing. This heart-wrenching discovery has left the local community in shock and deep mourning, while raising serious concerns about the inability of the La Republique military presence to provide the protection that they claim they are there for. Maloba Magdalene, a fifth-grade student at Government School Kumba Town Group 2, was last seen over 2 weeks ago. Her sudden disappearance sparked immediate concern amongst her family and the local community, who organized a search in hopes of finding her safely. Sadly, the young girl's remains were discovered in an advanced state of decomposition at Nkalikum Junction, indicating possible foul play. The discovery of her body has sent waves of grief, anger, shock through the community, especially amongst parents and educators. Them saying, "We are heartbroken. This could have been any of our children." Parents are complaining and lamenting tearfully about this sad incident, with another community member adding that they demand a full investigation and immediate action to ensure that such tragedy doesn't happen again. The tragic death of Maloba has become another grim symbol of the insecurity that has gripped the southern Cameroons, where mischievous people take advantage of the unrest with malicious intentions, carry out acts of impunity as such. Since the onset of the ongoing conflict, for years, people across Amazonia have voiced concerns over the growing insecurity caused by the presence of La Republique's military forces, who claim to be there to protect. But then, despite their claims of protecting Amazonian civilians, violence, kidnappings, and killings continue to plague communities, with even the securities shooting innocent civilians with excuses of mistaking them as threats. The insecurity in Amazonia is a direct consequence of the war, which has led to an erosion of trust in the La Republique's promises of protection. Many residents view the La Republique military presence not as a source of safety, but of course, occupation and a source of insecurity. In many cases, it exacerbates tension and fear rather than alleviating this fear and tensions. While troops have flooded the area, incidents like Maloba's tragic death suggest that their presence has done nothing to create a safer environment for Amazonians. While this latest incident has really sparked renewed calls for genuine protection for Amazonian citizens by Amazonian State Army, especially its children, Amazonian communities, and human rights advocates are demanding rigorous investigation into Maloba's death, calling on the colonial administration to take responsibility and hold accountable anyone involved in the heinous act. But the question remains whether La Republique authorities will prioritize the investigation, or they would do what they have done in the past, ignore the case and put it under the blanket. Well, that is all on the national report from the home front. Coming up next will be the African news. On the African scene, Moroccan journalist Hamid Madoui known for his investigative reporting and critique of prominent figures, was sentenced to 1.5 years in prison and fined $150,000 after being convicted of defamation. His conviction followed a video he posted accusing Justice Minister Abdel-Latif Ubi of corruption, which Ubi denies. The Royalist Party of Authenticity and Modernity, which Ubi heads, was embroiled in controversy last year after a drug trafficking case implicated party members. The case has drawn international criticism, with advocacy groups arguing that Madri's persecution under the penal code rather than Morocco's press code constitutes an attack on press freedom. Reporters Without Borders condemned the trial as a misuse of the justice system to intimidate and silence the press. Madri, editor of the news outlet Badil Info, has faced significant legal challenges before, including a previous imprisonment of supporting social activists. He has not yet announced whether he will appeal this latest verdict. Morocco has faced scrutiny for its treatment of journalists crucial of the government, despite recent high-profile patterns like King Mohammed VI for prominent journalists. The country's approach towards press freedom remains a contentious issue within the international community. Well, still on the African scene, Senegal prepares for heated legislative elections as opposition and government vie for control. Well, as Senegal approaches its snap legislative elections on November 17th, a fierce contest for control of the capital city, Dakar, has emerged. Opposition activists are canvassing neighborhoods to rally support, while the ruling party of President Bassirou Diomaye Faye offers cultural programs to engage voters. Both sides are expressing confidence in their chances. President Faye, who won a landslide victory in April on a platform promising to combat corruption, to improve living standards, dissolved the opposition-led parliament within months, accusing lawmakers of obstructing his reforms. While the snap election aims to secure a ruling majority supportive of his mandate, the opposition coalition, Macky Sall, boasted by former presidents Macky Sall and Abdoulaye Wade, poses a significant challenge. Although recent defections from their ranks to Faye's camp have stirred debate, these defections, condemned by the opposition, raise questions about shifting alliances in Senegalese politics. Political analyst Babacar Diouf suggests that current developments defy traditional comparisons and reflects the fluidity of political allegiances. Well, with 165 parliamentary seats at stake, voter turnout is expected to be low, though the outcome could shape Senegal's political landscape and either empower or curb the president's authority to implement his agenda. Coming up next will be news across the globe. Chinese laser energy weapon systems have been spotted in Iran, and they're capable of disabling or destroying drones. These advanced systems, known as the Silent Hunter, were developed in China and have a maximum power range of 30 to 100. With a maximum range of 4 kilometers, they use an electrically powered fiber optic laser and can penetrate 2mm steel plates at a range of 800 meters or a single 5mm steel plate at 1,000 meters. The Silent Hunter has been used by Saudi Arabia to guard against Houthi drones and missiles, with at least 8 systems deployed. Its presence in Iran suggests a significant upgrade in the country's air defense capabilities. It is worth noting that the deployment of these systems comes after Iran launched a barrage of missiles on Israel, highlighting the escalating tensions in the region. While the use of advanced laser technology for defense purposes underscores the ongoing innovation in military capabilities. The United States has conducted a second consecutive night of strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen, with reports of explosions in the Amran and Sada governorates north of Sana's capital. Well, this move is part of the United States' ongoing efforts to degrade the Houthis' capabilities to attack Red Sea targets, particularly commercial ships and United States warships. Well, the strikes, which began on January 12, 2024, were authorized by President Joe Biden and supported by the United Kingdom, Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Denmark, and Netherlands, as well as New Zealand. The operation, codenamed Poseidon Archer, aims to disrupt the Houthis' ability to launch attacks on shipping lanes in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. The U.S. has been conducting these strikes in response to the Houthis' increased attacks on commercial ships and U.S. warships. The Houthis have been using advanced conventional weapons, including coastal missiles, batteries, loitering munitions, and fast attack craft. The situation remains tense, with ongoing reports of explosion and airstrikes in the region. Well, China in air show. China recently stunned the world with an awe-inspiring air show, showcasing its cutting-edge drones and fighter jets. The event highlighted the impressive capability of China's advanced aircraft, including the Chengdu J-20, a twin-engine stealth fighter with precision strike capability. This fifth-generation fighter boasts advanced features like divert-less supersonic inlet, the DSI intakes, stealth coating, and thrust vectoring control. Meanwhile, Turkey also made a significant impact at the air show by unveiling a state-of-the-art weapon system demonstrating its growing military prowess. And with that, we've come to the end of tonight's Undaunted. But before we go, let's take a look at the recap. On Undaunted tonight, we took a look at Thibault Nage, his advocacy for Southern Cameroons. We also took a look at the Kansas City 3, as well as 17 days after a 12-year-old goes missing. She was found dead in Kumba, showing the insecurity still ongoing in Amazonia. On the home front, we saw Colonial La Republique's legacy of neglect in Amazonia. Workers of Cameroon Development Corporation as well on the street protesting for unpaid wages. And on the African scene, we saw Moroccan journalists sentenced amid international outcry over press freedom. And on the global scene, Chinese laser energy weapons system have been spotted in Iran amidst its amazing air show. And that was it for tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Star Smart. We leave you with ABC Amba TV images. And God bless you.